So today's notes are the second half of the absolute value equations. So yesterday we talked about absolute value. Anything in the absolute value bars turns positive or stays positive. And we had started looking at 2, 4, 5, and 9 about solving absolute value equations. So the key is that there are always two answers, and you're going to set up two equations to solve. Now, sometimes the answers are the same, but opposites, like in problem 4 here, it's 9 and -9, or, if you take a look at 5, they're two different numbers. So we want to make sure that we check our work to make sure that they both make sense. So we are going to take a look at problem 3, 6, 7, and 8 today. So for problem 3, the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that that absolute value is isolated. So we are going to want to get that by itself. So the first thing we're going to do is do not distribute. A lot of times people are like, oh, I'm going to multiply in there. No, you cannot distribute with absolute value. So the absolute value is being multiplied by 2. So we're going to do the opposite, which is divide by 2. So we get absolute value of 2x plus 13 now equals 5. Now that that absolute value is by itself, we are going to have 2x plus 13 equals 5, just like we saw yesterday. It's going to look exactly the same. And then we will, not sure what that is. Let's undo here for a second. Oh, okay. Wasn't sure what that was. All right, and then we'll have our second equation, which is 2x plus 13 equals -5. So we are going to solve for both like we did yesterday. So we're going to subtract 13 on both sides. So this gives us 2x equals -8. And then we'll finish this portion up by dividing by 2. So x is going to be -4. On the other side, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to subtract 13. But now we have 2x equals -18. Divide by 2 to get x equals -9. So two answers, -9, -4. And then we can go back and check it by plugging it back into the original, or you could just plug it back into this condensed form. So if we plug -9 in, 2 times -9 is -18. -18 plus 13 is 5. So that works out. Well, excuse me, -18 plus 13 is -5, but -5 with the absolute value is +5. Same thing if we plug in -4, 2 times -4 is -8. -8 plus 13 is 5, and the absolute value of 5 is 5. Moving down to problem 6, we are going to start by, again, we want to focus on getting absolute value by itself first. So we're going to add 5 to both sides. So we have 2, absolute value of x equals 8. Still want absolute value of x by itself, so we'll divide by 2. And remember, the multiplying and dividing of 2 cancels each other out, so it's like it never happened. So we have absolute value of x now equals 4. Now at this point, this is where we're going to break it into the two pieces because our absolute value is alone. So we have x equals 4, and we have x equals -4. And that is it. We are actually done because there's nothing to break down any further. And if you check your answer and we plug it back in, absolute value of 4 is 4, 2 times 4 is 8, 8 minus 5 is 3. So that checks out. If we take -4 and plug it back in, absolute value of -4 is +4. And then you have the same thing. 2 times 4 is 8, 8 minus 5 is 3. For number 7, same deal. We are going to try to get this absolute value by itself first. So again, there's a lot of stuff going on. We want to get that alone. So we're going to start by adding 23 to both sides. So we have our 4, we have absolute value of x minus 10 now equals 60. Still need to get that absolute value of x minus 10 alone. So we're going to divide by 4 on both sides. So absolute value of x minus 10 now equals 15. Now that that absolute value is alone and isolated, we are going to take that and we're going to break it into the two pieces. So a lot of times people want to take the original, they want to take this part and solve, and then do this part and make this negative, but that does not work out the way it's supposed to. So now we're going to take x minus 10 equals 15 and solve, and do x minus 10 equals negative 15. So once it's isolated at this step, that's where you break it into the two parts. So we're going to add 10 to both sides for both of them. So one answer is going to be x equals negative 5. Add 10 over here. 10 plus 15 is going to be x equals 25. And then again, you could check by plugging it back into the original or the condensed form and make sure that that, when everything is said and done, equals 37. Again, not taking this part and splitting it into two parts. We got to get that absolute value isolated before we break it apart. The last one is kind of a trick question. So before anybody gets started, this is no solution. And the reason why is because you have absolute value by itself equals a negative number. There's nothing that you could plug in here and do and take the absolute value to make it be a negative 3. There's no way. It's always going to be positive. And let's say that you forgot and you kept going and you worked it out and you solved and you added 5 and you got x equals 2. If you take 2 and plug that back in, 2 minus 5 is negative 3, but absolute value of negative 3 is not negative 3. It's positive 3. So that doesn't make sense. So that doesn't work out. And then even if you kept going, and you said, okay, x minus 5 equals 3, and you solved it, you would get x equals 8. And if you would plug that back in, 8 minus 5 is 3, but absolute value of 3 is not negative 3. So there's no way that this is going to work, because no matter what, whatever you plug in here for x and you take the absolute value, never, ever, ever going to be a negative. So this is no solution. Now, when we go to have our quiz, we're going to kind of stick with the more basic ones that we saw, like problem 2, 4, 5, and 9. These other ones are a little more advanced, but it is good to look over them to know how to do them as well.